Let me unfind. That's a Hashem. Today's daf is daf Mem Gimel. We are starting from daf Mem Beis Amid Beis about the Mishnah, about 3 lines from the bottom, the Mishnah. So very easy. This is going to be a very, very quick daf. What the Gemara is discussing over here, again, always in the Masechta, is Reuven is called the Madir. And he tells Shimon, Mr. Shimon, you're usher on my possessions, okay? So Shimon cannot benefit from Reuven's possessions. So Reuven is the Madir, and Shimon is called Hamudar, the guy, the Bawi. He's the subject. So Hamudar Hanor Mechaber. So the Gemara first tells you one strange thing. If the Mudar, Shimon, he can't benefit from his friend, Lo Yash Ilenu. He can't lend him anything. Now, why not? Reuven can benefit from Shimon, but Shimon can't benefit from Reuven. So why can't, like, Shimon lend Reuven his car? What's wrong with that? So we'll have to discuss that. And this I understand. This we could understand. Hold on, let's just begin it again. Hi, Sheldon. Hi, Lewis. We just began. So what we're discussing is that if a person who's called a mudar, Shimon is usher with 3 lines from the bottom of Membeis, 42b. So Shimon cannot benefit from Reuven. So the Mishnah begins that since Shimon can't benefit from Reuven, the Mishnah starts off and says, Lo yashi lenu. Shimon cannot lend Reuven his car, can't lend him anything. Now, this is questionable. Why not? Because Reuven could benefit from Shimon. It's just that Shimon can't benefit from Reuven. So why can't Shimon lend Reuven his car? Okay, that makes sense. Shimon cannot borrow something from Reuven because by doing so, he's deriving benefit from Reuven. Lo yalvenu. This is also, Shimon cannot lend Reuven money because I don't know why. Because Reuven should be technically allowed to take the money because Reuven can benefit from Shimon, but he cannot borrow from Reuven. This is also strange. Shimon cannot sell Reuven anything. Reuven's paying for it. Why not? And he cannot. So let's understand what's going on in the Gemara. Why can't he buy something from him? Also, he's paying for it. Maybe he's gonna pay the low price, and maybe that's why he can't buy. But why can't he sell something to Reuven? Reuven is allowed to benefit. So let's go to the Gemara right away. The Gemara explains it. Bishlama, we understand. Let's say Reuven. We're talking about Reuven, the Madir. He should not lend. The Reuven cannot lend Shimon the Kamahanele because he's causing Shimon to have benefit. Shimon now has a loan, so therefore Reuven can't not lend Shimon. Why can't Reuven borrow from him? My Kamahanele. What benefit does Shimon have when he lends Reuven money? In fact, he's taking a risk. Maybe Reuven won't pay him back, and Reuven is permitted to benefit from Shimon. And so the Gemara says like this. The Gemara tries to explain away the Mishnah and says, Bishlam, I understand very well. I understand very well that Reuven cannot borrow from Shimon and not buy something from Shimon. The call is Hani because Shimon derives benefit. Now, what benefit does Shimon derive when someone borrows money from him? So the Rashi explains that sometimes Reuven will borrow currency that's going to be outdated, and then or currency that is rubbed out, and he's going to return fresh $100 bills. So there is a benefit to Shimon by lending money to Reuven because when he gets paid back, he's going to get paid back nicer money than he gave. And he should not buy something. Why can't Reuven buy something? Because maybe Shimon cannot find another buyer. So he's so happy to have Reuven buy the item. So therefore, the Komishanim lay. So therefore, Shimon is deriving benefit by selling something to Reuven. Why can't Reuven borrow, let's say, Shimon's car? What kind of benefit does Shimon have if if Reuven borrows his car. I mean, Shimon doesn't benefit from it. Rabbi Yosef adjusts our Mishnah. Kigoin, our Mishnah is talking about Shenadru Hana Zemizeh. That's the Mishnah is talking about. Reuven prohibited Shimon, and Shimon went ahead and reciprocated and answered Reuven on his possessions. So they're both also on each other's possessions. That's why the Mishnah says they can't do any transaction. They can't lend each other items, lend each other money, and also sell an item to each other. That's the first way to interpret the Mishnah. By the way, the difference between the word yilva is money, borrowing, lending, and yishal is usually with movable items, tangible items, like a car or something like that, is called yishal, you're borrowing. Abaya says, our Mishnah is talking about the regular case, Reuven answered Shimon from benefiting from Reuven's possession. So Shimon cannot derive benefit. But the reason why Reuven cannot derive benefit from Shimon is gezerah lishol mishum lahashol v'enchem b'kula gezerah. We are geyser that maybe if we allowed Reuven to borrow money from Shimon, then Shimon will ultimately borrow money from Reuven. If we allow, so that's a gezerah, a rabbinic gezerah, an edict that we don't want them to have any transaction, even though the hana is also one way. If we allow Reuven to buy something from Shimon, so then it'll come the other way around that Shimon will buy something from Reuven, so they're going to benefit from each other. So therefore, gezerah, we don't want them to interact with each other. And that's how Abaye understood our Mishnah. New Mishnah. Mishnah has two parts to it. Very easy. I think we've accounted this before in Masechta Ksubas. First, the Gemara says, regular Nedarim, Amalai, a man says to his friend, Hashi Leini Paraska, please lend me your cow. Amalai, so his friend tells him, Eino Pnuya, it's not available. Okay, so now the person who asked to borrow the cow got angry. He thinks his friend is faking around with him, and he says, okay, I'm not going to even allow you the benefit of lending me your cow anymore. Omar, he said, I am answering my field from ever plowing with this cow forever. Now, what did he mean? Did he mean that I'm not going to plow this field with your cow, or I'm not going to allow your cow to plow the field? There's a big difference. So the Mishnah says like this, if he's the man that always plows his field, he has no workers, he plows his own field, so then what he meant to say is, I will not use your cow to plow the field. So who asar? He's not allowed to use the cow. V'chol adam mutarim, but he's allowed to have if he happens to hire a worker or somebody else does it, they're allowed to use that cow and plow the field, because he only asked that I will not allow you the benefit of seeing me use your cow anymore. But but if he's a person that never plows his own field, he always has workers. So when he made this neder, he was actually saying, I will never have benefit from a field plowed by your cow. So I will not allow your cow to plow my field, no matter who's plowing it. Who? The Cholad HaMasurim. Not only him, but any worker that he has is usher to use that cow. Another part to the Mishnah. Mishnah says, gives you three different cases, and each case teaches you another idea. Sometimes, if they can't benefit from each other, but let's say you're in a pickle, they must benefit from each other. For example, again, our case, Reuven said, my possessions should be usher for you, Shimon. And now Shimon's poor and has no food. And, he's not that poor, so what do? But you want to help him out. If Shimon is usher to have benefit from Reuven, and he has nothing what to eat, and Reuven wants to help him, but he has this neder, Shimon cannot benefit from him. So what should Reuven do? He goes to a shopkeeper that he knows that will understand what he means. And he'll tell the shopkeeper, Ish ploini mudar mimen hana. This so-and-so, Shimon, cannot benefit from me. Okay, and I don't know what to do. Basically, he's telling the shopkeeper in unspoken words that if Shimon comes to the store, give him on credit, and I'll pay for it. Right? Give him credit and I'll pay for it. The shopkeeper can give the food to Shimon, and then request the money from Reuven. So 2 points. First of all, this shopkeeper is not a messenger of Reuven, because then it's Shimon's benefiting from Reuven, because if he was an actual messenger, then Shimon would not be able to benefit. It's just like, an unspoken agreement. But the truth is, and this is the other point, if Reuven turns around and says to the shopkeeper, I'm not paying you for what Shimon took, so the shopkeeper is on the hook. So that's number one. Again, number 2 point is that it's not only with food we let you get around, and that's the Kiddush of the Mishnah. You're getting around with something that, technically should be also forever. Let's say there was a hurricane, and the guy's house was blown away, or his fence was gone, or his field is now open. He had a house to be built, or his fence to be put up. So he has a field to be cut. And Shimon is in a bind, and Reuven wants to help him, but Shimon cannot benefit from Reuven. So he could go to workers, and Reuven goes to workers. And he says like this: so and so, Shimon cannot benefit from me, right? He cannot benefit from me. I don't know what to do. The workers understand what he's saying. Go work for Shimon, and you can collect your wages from me. They can work with him, and they can take their reward from him. So basically, not only with food we let you get around with, but if other need items, we'll let you use this like roundabout way where Reuven could provide benefit to Shimon, but it's in a roundabout way, not the normal way. Then the Mishnah says, furthermore, let's say Hoya Mahalchim B'derech. They were going on the road. And he has nothing. He has nothing to eat. And this is where they're really starving. Reuven and Shimon happen to be walking on the way. Reuven has food. Shimon is going to be starving, but Shimon has a neder, cannot benefit from Reuven. So then, noisin le'echad l'shumatana, he can give it to one person as a gift. There's a third party walking with them. V'hala mutar, and then this person is mutar. In other words, what Reuven said to Shimon, and this is a very important point, Reuven said to Shimon, as long as I own the possessions, you can't benefit from them. So therefore, if Reuven would give his, let's say, food or whatever he is, wants to benefit Shimon, he gives it to Levi, and Levi gives it to Shimon, so then it's not Reuven's possessions, because when he gave it to somebody as a gift, to Levi as a gift, it now, Reuven is not the owner anymore. Levi is. So Levi can give it to Shimon. So then that's how you can get around it. So if they have no way to get around it, even though the Chiddush is that even though Levi understands that he's only getting this gift to give to Shimon, but since it's an unspoken word, Reuven didn't tell Levi, give it to Shimon. He just gave him as a gift. But Levi understands on his own to give it to Shimon. That's good enough. What happens in Ein Imohim Acher? Let's say there's nobody else with them. In other words, it's Reuven and Shimon. Right. If it's just Reuven and Shimon, so then what do? So what Reuven and Shimon is starving, but he can't benefit from Reuven. So and Reuven has this big loaf of bread. Meniach al hasela oy aragoda. He puts it down on the rock and on the fence. And he says, he says that this piece of bread, this loaf of bread is hefker. Now, hefker means anybody can take it. Usually, to make something hefker, you need 3 people. But here is a dire situation. Shimon is starving, and Reuven wants to help him out. There are the only 2 people around. So, in Torah, we let Reuven unclaim ownership, relinquish his ownership of this loaf of bread by pronouncing that it's hefker. And by doing so it's no longer Reuven's loaf of bread. And therefore, Shimon can come and take the bread. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi prohibits. Now, what the Gemara is going to understand, why would Rabbi Yossi prohibit such a thing? Because Rabbi Yossi probably holds is that a person cannot relinquish, just like you cannot be an unJew. You can't unJew yourself. So you can't relinquish ownership of an item until somebody else takes ownership of it. So just because you said it's hefker, anybody could take it, you're still considered the owner of the item. And therefore, since you're considered the owner of the item, when Shimon picks it up, it's as if he's getting the item from Reuven. So Rabbi Yossi disliked this whole idea. That's the way the Gemara understands. So it's a very important machlokes between the Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yossi holds that hefker doesn't mean you relinquish ownership. Hefker means allow somebody to acquire ownership. You're allowing somebody to acquire ownership, but as long as somebody did not acquire ownership, then it's still yours. And in fact, you can retract your retract giving it and making it hefker. That's because you're still the owner. But the Chachamim hold that as soon as you say it's hefker, you lost ownership of it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and that's why this idea is permitted according to the Chachamim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, "My time with Rabbi Yossi." What is the reason of Rabbi Yossi? Because Kusavar, he holds hefker. When you make something hefker, kimatana, it's as if you're giving a gift to somebody. Ma matana, just like when you give a gift, the giver doesn't relinquish ownership ad the asyam rishus noisen rishus mekabel till it leaves the domain of the giver and it enters the domain of the receiver. So then that's when the ownership transfers. Af hefker, so hefker would not transfer ownership until somebody finds it. And that's why Rabbi Yossi holds it's still called Reuven's as long as nobody found it. And therefore Shimon can't come and take it off the fence or take it off the rock. Masav Rababa asked this question, this Rababa. Okay, there's a Brisa who repeats the Mishnah and says Rabbi Yossi Aser. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, Masai, when do I say that this is not a good idea? The first came the neder, and then came the hefker. So then you can't, the neder, once you asered your possessions, even the loaf of bread, and then you mafker it, it doesn't work because you're still owner of that loaf of bread. Says Rabbi Yossi, we go to Amid Beis. But if you first made hefker, you said this loaf of bread is hefker, and then you made a neder, Shimon, you also my possessions, then Shimon hareze mutter. Shimon could take the loaf of bread. Wait a second. If you say until it comes to somebody who retrieves it, it's still called Reuven's loaf of bread. So then why is it that if the hefker came first and then the neder, Shimon could take it? What's the difference if the neder came before the hefker? Or the hefker came first and then the neder? It doesn't matter, as the hefker never left Reuven's possessions, and it's always called Reuven's. So under no circumstances can Shimon retrieve it because it's still called Reuven, unless somebody else gets it. But as long as nobody else did not get it, Shimon cannot take it because it's still Reuven. So why did Rabbi Yossi says if the hefker came before the neder, harei mutter? Answers the Gemara, who moisav lav u'mashanav lav. This we find a lot in Gemara, that the person that asked the questions can sometimes give his own answer. So Rabbi Abba asked the question, and he says, I'll give you the answer. The reason why Rabbi Yossi will say, if the hefker came first you will mafkir the loaf of bread, and then you made the neder, Shimon could retrieve it, because when you made the neder, you didn't include that loaf of bread. You meant, because since you're already trying to get rid of that loaf of bread, so when Reuven asked his possessions on Shimon, he meant all the possessions that I really, my intention is to keep. That loaf of bread, my intention is to get rid of. Even though it's still called my loaf of bread, I don't want that loaf of bread to be included in the neder. So that what we said, Kol hanoider ein daita al mashe hifka. When he makes the neder, he has no intention to include in the neder what he made hefker. So if he made hefker first, the bread, and then he made the neder didn't take effect on the bread, even though it's called Reuven's bread. So that's how we resolve that brisa. But then we have another problem. Masav Rava had a question. We'll do it the gears of the Rav. Rava asked the question, and this is the last question. Miktsosen l'rishon v'kulan sheni. You see, my pointer's on the ran. It's just a little girsa. Just a quick point. If a person has a slave, a Eved Kanaini, so whatever the Eved owns, you own. So let's say you say to the Eved, oh, Eved, my car is your car. So that's basically saying nothing because the Eved is your Eved. So if you're giving the Eved the car, automatically the car belongs back to you because the Eved belongs to you. So that certainly doesn't work. The only time you can actually free an Eved if you tell an Eved, all my possessions, 100% of whatever I own belongs to you. So that, in effect, saying is that you, my Eved, belong to yourself. You are now free. And not only that, you could acquire everything that I own. So the Mishnah said, the Brisa said like this, a guy has 2 avodim. And for the first Eved, he said, Miksosen l'rishon. He said, whatever, I'll give you, to the first slave, he said, I give you 10% of my assets. Okay, that means nothing. But Bekula l'sheni, to the second slave, he says, you could have 100%. Sheni zochel l'shtabe berishon. The second one acquires everything, and not only that, he acquires also the first Eved. He goes free and acquires the first slave. Now the question is, why not? Why should he acquire the first slave? We see that his intention was to get rid of the first slave, and then the second slave should acquire everything, the remainder. And yet no, since this first slave and the possessions that he gave to the first slave is still called his possessions. So when he said everything belongs to the second one, he meant to include that. So we see from there that just like that, we'll say over here, just like by when he's giving gifts to his slave, even though he started giving something to one slave, if it didn't work out, when he gave everything to the second slave, he included what he wanted to give away. So the idea is that even if he started mafkir something, but it's still called his, right? Because according to Rabbi Yossi, even if you mafkir something, it's still called yours. So when he makes a neder after making it hefker, he should include even the thing that he tried to make hefker. So in our case, when he made that bread hefker, the loaf of bread hefker, and then made a neder, right? So who says the neder would not include that loaf of bread? That loaf of bread is still called his, and therefore it should be considered his loaf of bread. It's his loaf of bread, it should be included in the neder. So why would Rabbi Yossi hold if the hefker came before the neder, it's mutar? Ela Amar Rava, this is the final case, final answer. Rava says that everybody agrees. When you're mafkir something, boom, as soon as you say hefker, you're not the owner anymore. You relinquish ownership, it's not called yours. So then why did Rabbi Yossi say it's usher? Why would Rabbi Yossi say something like that? It's usher to leave the bread and mafkir it and let Shimon come take it. Because we're afraid of the story of Beis Chayrim. What are we afraid of? We are afraid of that when Reuven says, oh, I'm mafkir it, he's going to say, I'm mafkir it so that Shimon can get it. So that's not called a good hefker, because hefker means anybody can get it. So because of that, Rabbi Yossi says hefker, by saying hefker, it won't work. But that's only if you made the neder first. So we're thinking that even if you're going to mafkir it, even if you say nothing, you might come to say that I'm mafkir it so that Shimon can get it. So that works very well. That if you made the neder first, hefker would be not good according to Rabbi Yossi, because of that gzera, you might come to say I'm mafkir it so that Shimon can get it, and that's not a good hefker. But if you made hefker first, right? If you made a hefker first, and then you made the neder, so you won't come to that problem. Because there was no neder when you made it hefker. So there, Rabbi Yossi would agree, hefker, you relinquish ownership of it. If you relinquish ownership, then, and if you make a neder, then it's not yours. Shimon could benefit from that bread that's on the wall there. What was the story? And we'll finish with this. What was the story of Beis Chayrim? A very simple thing, a very interesting story. There was this guy who got into a fight with his father, and he asked his father on all his possessions. Then it's not a new thing. And then he was making a chasana. So he wanted to invite his father. But his father can't come to the wedding because he's not permitted to benefit from his son's possessions. So what did the son do? He said, whatever my father's going to eat, he gave it to his friend. And he says, whatever the food here, I'm giving it to my friend. And the friend right away said, oh, you're giving it to me so that your father can benefit? I'm making it hegdish. So the guy screamed, what do you mean to make it hegdish? I wanted my father to be able to come to the wedding. I didn't mean to give it to you as a gift that's yours. So that eventually that wasn't the good way out of it. So the father could not come because it wasn't a real gift. It was a gift so that the father could come to the. He mentioned that the reason why I'm giving it to you as a gift is so that my father could come to the wedding. So that is not a good gift, that the father could not attend the wedding under such pretenses. So same idea over here. We are afraid that a person may come to mafkarit and say, I'm mafkarit, but so that Shimon can get it. So even if he doesn't say that, Rabbi Yossi felt that we don't allow this trick of being mafkarit. And that's why Rabbi Yossi said, even if they're walking together alone, there's no way for Reuven to give benefit to Shimon if he already had the nether in place. Okay.
Okay. The more you